All right, thanks a lot for joining us. My name is Scott, of course, and I'm with the 309 Punk Project. And we have a lot of people in our punk diaspora from Pensacola surrounding regions. And it's always a great pleasure to be able to talk to somebody who actually lived in 309 and has gone around the world and done some pretty interesting and amazing things. And I wanted to bring my good friend Sumaya in to talk about the situation that's currently going on in Myanmar, and it's an evolving situation, and there are many complicated aspects to this, but some of them are also pretty ongoing and have been pretty familiar for quite some time. So I thought that Sumaya could help to explain and talk about this. So first of all, welcome back to 309, Sumaya.
Thank you. It's great to be back virtually.
Hey, do you recognize your room? This is your room.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, we turned it into the archives. So you're living in history, or you lived in history, or however that works. Anyway, so first off, when did you live in 309?
Would have been 2005 and 2006.
Okay, yeah, and you have a daughter now, and she was born not long after. So how's Asha doing?
She's great. She's 14 now, but I was pregnant while I was living at 309. So it's been quite a journey since then, but she's great. She's turning into like a little version of all of us when we were No pressure for me.
Yeah, right.
But I think Gen Zers are really cool. I mean, they're just amazing.
I'm always impressed. Always impressed with them, and impressed with their music too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does Asha get to let you listen to her what she's listening to sometimes?
Yeah, it was really funny. Recently, she was listening to Nana Grizzle. You remember them? And I was like, "What? How did you hear about this band?" And she was like, "Oh, some of my friends at school told me about it." I was like, "This is literally what I was listening to when I was your age. Was all the folk punk." So,
well, my daughter once we were riding and we were listening to. I think NPR was playing in one of their NPR shows. They were talking about Grace Jones, and she said, "Oh, I love Grace Jones." Like, you like Grace Jones? Like, how did you find Grace Jones? So then I started listening to some of the stuff that they're all listening to, and whenever they take over the radio, it's like, "Oh, this is pretty good." All these bands I've never heard of, new bands, old bands, and yeah, the kids are smart, and they show up often. They show up to the protests. They're out there keeping things going. So love them to death. Not just our kids, but the whole generation. Got a lot of hope for the future.
Yeah, the Gen Zers, they're incredible.
So shout out to the generations,
Yeah.
one to another. So after Pensacola, you moved to Asheville, right? Or
I took a little bit of a detour around North Carolina, but yeah, I moved to North Carolina from Pensacola.
Right.
Yeah.
And then from Asheville, which is where we're going to talk about today, you went to Asia. So you went to Thailand first, and then to Myanmar. How did that happen?
Well, I have been immersed in studying and practicing healing arts for 15 plus years now. I started as a yoga teacher and body worker, and initially went to Thailand to study Thai massage and learn meditation. There is a Thich Nhat Hanh monastery there. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh. He's an anti-war activist who was exiled from Vietnam for his anti-war efforts there, and he
was
lived
actually
in
one of his monasteries over in Mississippi, I believe, too.
Oh, awesome! I'm not sure. I mean, he has plenty of them, but I mean, his message is really incredible. As far as the political messages that he shared, and just sharing his story of being a Vietnamese refugee and his anti-war efforts there. So I've been really inspired by his work for a very long time, and so I went also to study meditation, and ended up being able to meet him, which was really cool.
Oh, you met him?
Uh,
I didn't know that.
yeah, he was living at the monastery in Thailand for a few years. I believe he's back in Vietnam now. He
Mhm,
was just allowed to go back
mhm.
a few years ago, but yeah.
So that's what
That,
brought you
that
to
was
Thailand?
that was what initially brought me there. And then I have colleagues in Asheville, a retreat center that I used to work with. And they're a part of a larger international nonprofit. And they said, hey, we have a sister chapter in Thailand on the border of Myanmar. You should check it out next time you're there. So um, when I was in Thailand traveling, I had the opportunity to stay and volunteer at a women and children's refugee center that's on the border of Thailand and Myanmar.
Mhm.
And so that's how I initially found my way into doing this kind of work. The Myanmar solidarity efforts that I've been raising awareness about the past few years, it really started with my volunteer efforts there on the
Mhm.
border.
Okay, so how did you find the punks? Or did the
So,
punks find you? They
yeah.
looked at your tattoos and
So, there's a Buddhist magazine called Tricycle, and I'm subscribed to their online like newsletter magazine or whatever. And I got an email one day, and it was like, check out this trailer for this new film we're featuring called My Buddha is Punk. And so I watched the trailer, watched the film. And at this point, I was in the United States, but I was getting ready to go back to Thailand. And so I watched the film, and it was really kind of a life-changing moment watching that film, because being a Buddhist and being a punk, it's a little bit of a lonely world sometimes.
there's a few books out
um,
there, but
I mean, there's other ones out there, but I've been like oscillating back and forth between like my yoga and meditation community and my like social justice and punk community for a long time. And I've always felt like I was in this weird in between where, kind of I had these two communities and neither one really understood me fully. And there were only, a small handful of people that I felt like I, really like got, me and like who I was and what I was trying to do with my life. And watching that film, it was like I found these like kindred spirits, across the globe. And so that's how I found out about them. But when I was staying on the border village, uh, it's very common for people staying in Thailand to do what we call border runs or visa runs,
Mhm,
which is where you cross the border into a neighboring country to renew your visa and then come back.
mhm,
So at the time that I was staying at the refugee center, there were a couple of potential places that I could go. But just logistically, it seemed at the time that the easiest place to go was actually into Myanmar
mhm.
to renew my visa at the Thai embassy in Yangon.
And Myanmar for a long time was pretty blocked off. You could not go into
Yeah,
Myanmar, and
yeah. So
that just changed only a few years before you were there, right?
yeah, so that had only been, available for a few years. So I booked a flight to Yangon to go stay and renew my visa. And the way it works is you have to turn in your passport and your paperwork, and then you have to like hang out for a couple days while they
Mhm,
process your application. So I was just kind of stuck in Yangon, like hanging out for a few days, and
mhm,
had really nothing else better to do with my time. So I messaged my friends, that I had kind of met on the internet. So after I watched the film, I did like friend request and follow, some of these folks online just because I was so curious about their work. And so I stayed in touch with them, and I had messaged them a few times and talked to them about some of my refugee efforts and stuff. So we had already talked a little bit
mhm.
online. It wasn't totally out of the blue, but I just, sent Chocho a message and said, hey, I'm in Yangon. I'll be here for a few days. Let me know if you want to grab lunch. And that was it from there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that might be a good segue to introduce our
Mhm.
friends. So let me see if I can do a screen share. terrible at this, and I always set up the wrong way. So hold on one second. Let me see if I can get it right. Okay, just 1 second. Okay, let me set this up. And we'll watch the trailer for just a few minutes. All right, screen share. The film was incredible.
It's so good. I'm like tearing up already. I just watched the trailer.
I mean, there's so many moments in that film that that just gave me such good feelings. And what was nice is after watching the film, after your recommendation, we had a crowd of like around, I guess around maybe 30, 40 people. They came to the Punxsutawney exhibit over at the museum downtown when the exhibit was up there, and they came to see that film. And it was just amazing, like to see all these people there, and the message in the film was just so positive and so uplifting in there. And just despite all of a genocide that was taking place against the Rohingya people, and to hear these conflicts back and forth between different segments within the punk community about what to do in this situation, just to hear this philosophy go back to Buddhism, but then also to go back to punk, and to go back to these this root of an anti-fascist punk ideals. And this was, it was amazing, and they all just seemed like really beautiful people in the film, like totally beautiful people.
Yeah, definitely the nicest punks I've ever met. Besides you and Lauren.
All right. Besides you. Well, let's go. There's no need to compare. Happy to be in the same company. All right. All right. So in that film, they were talking about the issue with the Rohingyas, and you worked with that community as well, right?
Um, well, the refugee community I was working with was on the other side of the border. So just to give a little bit of context in terms of geography. So on one side of the Myanmar border lies Bangladesh, and that's actually primarily where a lot of the Rohingya refugees are going,
Mhm.
is to the Bangladesh border. But on the other side of Myanmar is Thailand, and the Mon and Karen refugees from the hill tribes on that side of the country are primarily there. But there's also a lot of cross back and forth. I mean, there's refugees that are really scattered all throughout Southeast Asia. There's also Burmese refugees that have fled to Indonesia, Malaysia, and all kinds of places. Um, so yeah, it's not exactly, one particular population, but the Rohingyas, it is the population that really experienced what we know as a true genocide, the past few years, although there's been conflict with the other border tribes as well.
Okay. Well, so what's happening right now? Because that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about
Yeah.
the situation, because as we watch the news and we see the military take back over the country, and we
Mhm.
see all sorts of protests and violence taking place on the streets, and after following our friends in Rebel Riot,
Mhm.
that we get to see how they're responding to this. So, briefly, if it's possible, can you condense a complex situation and tell us what's happening?
Yes, I can try. Essentially, there was a Democratic election in November, and the woman who was previously in power, the democratically elected leader who's been in power for quite a number of years now, she was reelected, and it seemed as if, it was a fair election in the eyes of the people, and all of a sudden, February 1st, a military coup was staged. And, if you just, think about the context of what happened on the steps of the US Capitol,
Mhm.
imagine if that was the US military, that were taking over, but then they succeeded. That's
Mhm.
essentially what's happening in Myanmar right now, is the military staged a coup and arrested the democratically elected government
Mhm.
officials, and there's mass violence in the streets. They're essentially just killing anyone that's stands in their way. There's a lot of violence happening all around the country right now. Yeah.
So what are our friends at Rebel Riot? And tell us their names again.
Chocho is the person that I stay the most connected with, who's the lead singer and guitarist. And then the other person that I stay in close contact with is his nickname is Andrew. He also has a Burmese name, but goes by Andrew. And he plays bass for them
Mhm.
sometimes. So those are the two people I stay most connected with over
Were
there.
they the two people in the video? The one religious leaders?
Chocho is in that
Oh,
video, but Andrew is not. I think Andrew was probably still like 10 years old when that, because this video is actually pretty old, and
uh-huh.
Andrew is like 21 or 22 or something. Um, but yeah.
Okay. So what are they telling you about what's happening?
So I know that one thing that Andrew has been sharing with me is that people are taking turns in the neighborhood doing street watch, which I think is a really amazing like alternative to policing. But essentially, like, they're all the neighbors are taking turns doing street watch, standing in the streets late at night and keeping an eye out on the neighborhood, and then notifying people if other things are happening.
Mhm.
But there's also a lot of raids that are happening, fires that are being started in neighborhoods. The police are raiding the neighborhoods in the night and just arresting people. They're just disappearing in the night. So these are just a couple of the stories that my friends over there are sharing.
Mhm. Yeah, I've seen pictures of them in the protests themselves marching. As they're marching
Yeah.
with the anti-fascist flags, the black and the red,
Mhm.
taking to the streets, and uh, it's interesting when we think about it over here, when we are, protesting, marching, and definitely the events of the summer stepped up quite a number of
Mhm.
notches. But to see this still, these people taking to the streets, and then, when 100 people are shot and killed by the police, at least, hundreds of people, killed by the police, and there, it makes it even, yeah, it just puts in a level that's almost incomprehensible for a lot of people in this country to really grasp, how, yeah, how brave it is, to do
Mhm.
this, to stand up in these moments, and then to publicly, come out and act like, as as neighborhood guardians, in this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are definitely making an effort to try to look out for each other, and I think that is an aspect of punk that has always resonated with me, is just this idea of community and mutual aid, and they're really embodying it to the full extent, even in the midst of a civil war and a military coup. So it's pretty amazing that they're still keeping it up in the midst of all that.
Yeah, well, I'd see some of the posts beforehand and see some of the ones where, the Funab bombs work that they were doing, and to see all these different connections between things that we're doing here in the U.S. and then things that, yeah, that they were doing. But yeah, to see it just like in the film, and for those who haven't seen the film, you really should watch the entire film. The trailer is inspiring. The whole film is incredible. And you can get it on Venmo, is that right? Or not Venmo?
Vimeo, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, Vimeo.
Vimeo, yeah, Venmo. I was trying to, that's the money one.
Yeah. And I think it's maybe $10 or $12. It's totally worth it. But if for any reason someone isn't able to access that, you can reach me and I'll work something out.
Okay, yeah, awesome. So with that in mind, what are some of the things that they are telling you that we could do? Because surely when you were talking to them, that, I'm sure you're asking, like, what can we do? And when, us here in the US, whenever we see things like that people want to help out, but we're
Mhm.
also thousands of miles away, and it's
Yeah.
difficult to really do much. And so what are they saying are things that we can do over here to help?
Yeah, it's interesting because I message them all the time and ask, what can I do to help? And sometimes the answer is nothing. I think the main things the number one thing I think that people can do is raise awareness, because I do think that if we can keep the awareness up and not just let it be one viral moment that dies over immediately, like many other headlines. I think if we can keep it up, that will help put pressure internationally on all the various different, government heads that are involved, in the UN, that really need to step it up. I mean, the US, China, Russia, I mean, these are the people that need to get involved and step in. And the only way that they are even going to remotely give a shit is if we keep the awareness of the people like on high alert,
Mhm.
and people keep talking about it.
Mhm. Well, hopefully
And
this will,
different concerns.
spur some, a little more discussion, a couple more letters out
Yeah,
there, and just to
yeah,
push that, just a little bit further, or at the very least, all that good energy, out there.
yeah,
I know that, in different times of protests, it is really inspiring to know that other people are paying attention to what you're doing. People that you never heard of in cities you've never
yeah.
been to are also watching what you're doing. Think about the Black Lives Matter protests when, I guess many phases of them, but after Ferguson, and how people in Palestine were
I know.
sending advice, and sometimes even sending food, ordering pizzas, stuff like that,
Mhm,
for people that are out there in the streets protesting,
mhm.
is awe-inspiring, to see those
Yeah,
kind of international connections. So
yeah, it's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that is really the main thing. And I have been sending donations. I send donations monthly to Food Not Bombs, as well as my host family. Um, when I was living in the border village volunteering, I lived with a small family, and it's a Burmese refugee single mom and her daughter that I live with. And my host mom has been unemployed since the beginning of the pandemic, for obvious reasons, and
Yeah.
isn't eligible for any kind of local government assistance because she's a refugee. So she just doesn't qualify for any of the local programs that are offering assistance. So I've been sending donations to her every month as well, and it feels like a drop in the bucket, but you know
Mhm.
that's what I'm able to do. That's
Yeah. yeah, I guess when you have nothing and there's something, that we can do on this side, then that's certainly helpful,
Yeah.
in whatever ways it can.
Yeah.
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 Well, I'll give you two other questions here. One, are you hopeful about the situation?
I am not sure how to feel. There's times I feel incredibly depressed, and I mean, it sounds very dark, but I pretty much said goodbye to the people I love over there. Like, I kind of had to make peace with this idea that I might not ever see them again, and like had this conversation with people I love, like, no matter what happens, I just want you to know I'm thinking of you and I love you, and I'm, so grateful for you being part of my life. And, there's been moments that have been really hard the past few weeks. And then other times I try to stay hopeful. And I think the part of me that is hopeful is just seeing the uprising and the resistance that is in Myanmar, and seeing how widely it has been able to be publicized because of social media. And, I work in digital marketing now. And I mean, this is one of the most amazing things about social media is, how it can be used for the greater good at times.
Yeah, yeah. Brings us closer, but also makes the world seem harder to comprehend too, because you feel like, just because I could see you, that I know I can help. And sometimes situations are much more complicated, and also depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my last question for you, and I guess you kind of talked about that a little bit. Do you anticipate going back?
I feel confident that I will. And the question is really when, and who knows. I think it is seeming as if Thailand will be, they're aiming for being fully open by October 1st at this point. They are open with some restrictions right now, but I'm not jumping on a plane right this minute by any means. And as far as Myanmar, the airports are closed indefinitely. No one is going in or out.
Mhm.
So I couldn't even go there if I wanted to right now. And my friends have assured me it's not safe for me to go there right now. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess we just hope for good work, and in the meantime doing what we can. So some things that we can do on this side are continue to raise awareness, let our powers that be know that this is something that, if they have any power in this, to do something. And then
They do. I mean, have you seen the shit we've done in the Middle East? I mean, all we have to do is show up there. I mean, it's not like we can't, I mean, there's plenty of forces that are able to step in, but no one has yet. And so I hope that that will change.
Yeah. So we'll see how all this goes. And also, you mentioned food not bombs, too, and that's a direct way that people can help here. So with that one, would it be food not bombs in Myanmar or Thailand, or you
In Yangon. In Yangon.
in Yangon? Okay. So, and how do you spell that? It's
Yangon, and it used to be called Rangoon. So I know it's often still
like Burma and Myanmar.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll put in some links in the YouTube connection with this, so people can see that. And then for those who are just watching this on Zoom, then you can Google this and find out the information. So just like anything, if you desire to help, then you'll figure out a way to do so. All right. So Sumaya, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else you want to add to any of this?
No, thank you so much for chatting with me. It was great to connect with you.
No, yeah, absolutely.
And hang out in my old room virtually.
Well, you're always welcome back. All right. Virtually or in the real world. All right. So thank you again so much for this, and let's continue to hope for the best situation. All right.
Thank you.